Hi, Oliver.
Hello, you all right?
Yeah, good. It's lovely to see your face again.
Very, very good to be on and to see you too.
Uh, How are you? How are things been? What are you doing at the moment?
Um, yeah, I have to be honest and say that for me, things are pretty good. I don't like to be one of these people who would suggest that have benefited from this period, but it has forced to refocus in what I do with my business, and it's forced me to do more of this online video stuff, and that has made my reach far wider. So from having panicked back in March, thinking, "Uh-oh," I'm now in a position where the business has grown and life's going quite well. From the point of view of taking on new clients and more people having conversations with me. So
Oh, that's
personally, I can't complain, but I appreciate I'm in the minority, so I don't like to chirp too much about it. But yeah, it's all right at the minute, thanks.
No, that's great. We love a bit of good news, so don't you
Yeah,
worry about that. So for anyone who's switched in and doesn't necessarily know you or know what you do, can you give us a quick intro into?
yeah. So I run a company. It's very innovative, really called Hill Coaching Company, which, as it potentially implies, is I'm a coach, for want of a better description. And basically, I help people become better versions of themselves in business and their personal lives. So I help people. It's as simple as that. Yeah, people can find out about me. I'm not going to talk about specifics. You can check me out. I'm all over the place on social media and the internet. But yeah, I'm here to help. That's my number one aim.
Absolutely. Well, we have talked many a times though that I know that the word coach is overused quite a lot, or at
Yeah,
least there seems to be a lot of coaches out there. But we've worked together for many years now, and I know that you work with what I would call, I know you call the 5%ers.
yeah,
So, which I'm sure we'll go into more detail in a bit. So, and it brings me actually perfectly segues me on to one of my favourite questions that I like asking our good egg entrepreneurs. We love self-development. What are the type of books, podcasts, or courses that have really shaped and influenced you in terms of your own development?
yeah. So people that do know me, my apologies, you've heard this 100 times before, but those who don't, it is the book The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson. There are a few others that I'll mention in a minute, but that is always the book that I start with. Here in my home office, I've got a pile of the books because I give them out to people and new clients to start with. Um, and it just rams home something that's absolutely fundamentally obvious, but sometimes we need to be reawakened to the idea that doing lots of small actions daily and as regularly as you can builds momentum, and it's all positive. Flip it round, fail to do lots of small things regularly, and it sends you on a downward curve of failure. And I know both you and I have been highly impacted by it, and I have the very famous Neill to thank for introducing me to that, because it really opened my eyes to reading and taking on content in a different way. It was a big fundamental shift for me. So it absolutely has to be that book. And as a result of reading The Slight Edge and then committing to reading a chapter of a good book a day, I've then now come across so many others, which I'm more than happy to mention a couple if you wish. But
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it has to be
please,
The
please
Slight Edge
do.
always.
Please
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
We
So
love it.
following on from that, I sort of thought of, there's many that I've done, but I picked three books and then one particular author in a series of books that I'd recommend anybody listening to try. The first one is The Inside Out Revolution by a chap called Neill. If you don't know him, he does a really big TED talk and I think it's called Why Aren't We Awesomer? So if you search that on YouTube, you can find his TED talk, which will give you a flavour as to what's coming. And the book is available on Audible as well. So that's a great listen. Then for the world of sort of marketing, there's Marcus Sheridan. They Ask, You Answer. Absolutely up my street. And I think a lot of people would read that if they haven't already, and it would resonate with them. And the final sort of starter would be Start With Why, which by Simon Sinek, which I know quite a few people have heard of. Again, he does some good TED Talks that sort of get you started. I always think it's quite a healthy way to introduce people to an author. So they're my sort of three main books I got into early. More lately, I've got into Daniel Pink. And he's done a book he's most well known for probably is Drive. But there's a couple of other books around it as well. One, in fact, before that, which is called A Whole New Mind, which you can see sort of leads on to the book. But yeah, there's 4 main books of his that I read, and I thoroughly recommend people checking it out. And it coincided with a little thing I thought might be useful to share with people. I don't think it'll work for everyone, but I've approached a different way to digesting content and reading at the moment, which I found out is nothing new. It's a well-known thing that many people have already used, but I now have the Audible and the book in front of me, and I speed the play of the Audible up whilst reading the words that are being spoken to me. And I've got to a point now where I can listen to it at 3 times speed, but keep up with the pace of play on the pages in front of me. And I'll just hit pause if something really resonates with me. I want to make some notes. And I got through the 4 Daniel Pink books in under 2 weeks. It was game changing. And I'm still only going at it a chapter at a time, you know, and it was, it was fantastic. So there's a little extra thing, not only some great content, but maybe a different way to approach digesting it as well. That might be helpful.
No, absolutely, because that's one of my, because I'm still quite new to reading, and I know that sounds weird to say that as a 33-year-old, but like The Slight Edge was my first book in a long time that I really got engaged with, and I got through it, and then I started another book, and then I was like starting to go, oh, but hold on now, I can't quite remember what we were talking about. And I think that's where I'm trying to find my feet at the moment, is that as I am reading or listening or engaging with material, which I go in the moment, go, oh, this is great, how do I hold on to it so it doesn't just like vanish again? I was like, or quite often I'm doing something, it's like, oh, what, something in this book, or maybe was that book something really great points, but I can't remember what it is. So I'm a highlighter girl, so all my books just get absolutely abused. There's no way I could ever hand them over to someone else after I have, because they are absolute filth, and notes and scribbles and all sorts over them, which is another reason I can't really do the Kindle thing, like the electronic reading.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I struggle with that. It's never quite sort of worked for me. I think if you get experience with it, it can work in the same way, but it just, I don't know. For me, I know what my preference is, and I have a few tactics. I mean, first we talked about The Slight Edge. I admitted to you recently, I've read that 5 times now. And every time I get something slightly different from it, I must admit, I possibly skim over certain bits now that I'm very familiar with, that I don't feel I want to revisit. So there's maybe just a few chapters, but I also have my yellow book of gold, which in this, I write down in the front a sort of an index. And basically, any page that I write anything about any book, I'll make a note of it in the index here. And I will just list the page and a little bit of information about what it is on that page that I really like. So I can go back to it, and it will trigger and remind me why the hell it was I liked that piece. Because you can be there in the heat of the moment and think, oh, wow, that's brilliant. I really want to do it. And like you say, maybe even the next day, you can't remember quite what it was, or you're a week later and you always wished you'd implemented it and you haven't. But by going back to this and getting better and better at writing the notes, because initially I wasn't too good at it, I found that a very useful way as well. So I think it's quite challenging to read a book once and just take everything from it. I think that if you can do that, then I have massive envy for that strength of yours, because I'm certainly struggle with it. But also rereading stuff is quite healthy, you know, especially leaving it a little bit of time. You know, you get different bits, I believe, than perhaps you did the first time around. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm on my second read of The Slight Edge at the moment, and like you, I'm sort of jumping over the more story bits because I remember them quite vividly. Funnily enough, stories sort of stick with you, but then I can see like all the things I highlighted. I go like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, that's why I did it. Yeah.
So yeah, no, and it's really interesting. And also, I'm in a very different frame of mind now than when I was the first time I read it, and a lot of growth has happened since then. So I find it quite interesting how I've obviously been able to take on some aspects, but it's just like the surface, and I feel like we're going a bit deeper now. So that's really cool. So
yeah, cool.
Let me refer to my notes, because my memory is not what it used to be. But yes, that's where we're going. So in this world of change that we live in, with all the uncertainty that has sort of loomed over us and has actually forced change within society, business, whatever else, what are the bits of change that you've seen happening that you are like desperately hoping that will actually keep them and not go back?
Yeah, I think that this one for me, I mean, there's many you could pick on, but it's the working from home, the trusting people, and the sort of number of hours or how we work. I feel that's almost part of a neat little package. It's forced working from home on companies that didn't really want to do it, and I don't know why they didn't want to do it, but they didn't. It's given people the opportunity, because I'm also not saying that there shouldn't be offices. It just, and I'm not saying there should be 4-day weeks or 6-day weeks or 1 week on, 1 week off. What it's forcing is the conversation, because businesses have got no choice but to talk about it and to learn from it, and they've got no choice but to learn to trust their staff more, because if they are having to work remotely, you have to trust them. And shockingly, most staff are reasonably trustworthy. I know that can't be said for all. There's always going to be some people that ruin it for everybody else, but in the main, businesses are seeing that not only can this work, it can be more effective, it can produce happier employees, the family work-life balance is better, the hours they choose to work are ones that suit them but still suit the business. It's stuff that should have been happening already, and it was in some companies, to be fair, but by no means enough. It's something that's had a lot of publicity. We see a lot about the 4-day week, but again, it's a very human thing to do, to suddenly think, right, 4-day week, then that's the future. No, that was just an idea that worked well for some companies, and it should stimulate the debate about what would work well for your company or your business or whatever it is that you're looking to do. So for me, that doesn't seem like it's something that's going to go away. And in fact, it's just probably pushed us forward 10, 15, 20 years quicker than maybe we were. It's going to have some impacts. Of course, there's so many negative things you could choose to pick out that have happened here, because there's a lot of bad stuff linked with it. There's a lot of sectors that are changed forever, but you can certainly look at lots of positives as well. If you choose to, you can see them, you can find them. And for me, that's it. And coincidentally, only last night I was having a bit of my Netflix time, and something's just come on Netflix called High Score. If anybody's seen it, and if they're like me, a sort of child of the 80s and 90s, it's all about video games. And I did not know really much about Atari. Obviously, everybody knows of Atari, but I didn't know how they started. And before they got taken over and grew, the culture at Atari in the early 80s was fantastic, because their culture was, if they wanted an engineer to come in and do a game, then they knew how to attract them, because they say, look, you come to work for us, you can wear what you want, you can turn up when you want, you can pretty much do within reason what you want to do at work. In fact, there's borderline a little bit illegal, some of the stuff they got up to. You can find out about that in the documentary. But you know what? That meant people were just concentrating on one thing: output, quality output. And how you want to achieve that will be up to you. But we only have one thing. We want you to agree to produce something of extreme quality, however you best do that. And somehow, in many, many businesses, that idea has been lost. And to just hear it only yesterday, thinking this is something that we hear some companies talking about as if they're new and innovative. Well, Atari were doing it in the 80s, so no, it's just a huge number of companies have lost sight of the fact that people work best when they're treated with respect, and you find ways that they work best rather than trying to fit them into systems that you think they should work best in. It's a bit of a fault that's crept into the sector. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping will change forever. And actually, I don't think I need to hope anymore. I think it has to happen.
Well, the proof's in the pudding, and thankfully we had to make the pudding. So
Yeah,
we've been forced.
in one way.
But I think you're right, and I think you touch on a really interesting point, actually, because I remember when I was classed as a startup, which I probably still am, but all the sort of advice that is available for startups, sort of government funded advice schemes, it's very much like, here's a box and now fit in it. It doesn't challenge the status quo. It doesn't actually push you to find a solution that suits your idea. Because that's what business is. It starts off with an idea and then you go from there. It straight away pushes you towards, oh, here's a spreadsheet and this is how you do your finances, and there's a thing called profit and loss. I watched a very unexpected program yesterday. I was sort of flicking about before going to bed, and it's a BBC Three program, and I just caught the end of the last episode, and it was definitely made for a younger generation than me. Something, it's basically, the name of it escapes me. It's something about Ibiza. So going to Ibiza, and there's all these young kids straight out of uni go to Ibiza as reps, but actually incredibly intelligent, capable young people who have a vision that is way bigger than going and be a rep somewhere and get wasted all summer, which is what we associate that job being. And there's like a bunch of like 3 young, incredibly good-looking young lads, and all the girls. That was the bit that I was like, I'm sure we don't all look like that. But anyway, besides the point. They were doing video and social media campaigns for these big clubs, and basically they've said we do a like for like swap. So you house us, you feed us, and we'll work for you in the summer, and you give us like a bit of pocket money. And then as the summer finished, or the season finished in Ibiza, they had done a deal to go to Thailand and do the same thing, and then they did it in Colombia and did the same thing. And I just thought, oh wow, that's a really different way. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know what's happened with them now, but I sort of could see that, okay, in 2-3 years time they'll have worked with such big names that that's when they can change their model and start charging and paying tax and all the boring stuff. But I just thought, yeah, okay, actually, if you're young and you don't have responsibilities, that's a great way to make a start.
Absolutely. Well, you touched on something that I'm fascinated to see, because you can't really predict this stuff. But I don't think the generation coming through are going to tolerate the environments that have been foisted upon yours and my generation and those before us. If there's no purpose in what you're doing, they won't do it. It's simple as that. They'll just say, no, I'm not doing that. They'll leave, they'll quit, they won't even start. They'll go off and do what they want to do. And I can hear people, of an older generation, wow, it's ridiculous, I need to work. No, people won't work hard for the sake of it. They'll work hard for the right things. They'll work hard for the right purpose. They're not going to slave behind a desk doing stuff that's mundane and boring for very long, if at all. And I'm fascinated to see how that plays out, because it's going to be a massive clash of generations. And it's fun to watch. It's not going to affect me directly, so I'm just an interested observer. But it's going to cause some problems for some companies if they don't shift and they don't say why they do what they do and things like that. It's going to cause problems, and that's fun. It's fun problems.
It's so true. And I had a really big let's call it a discussion with my Swiss uncle, who's way retired. But he did really well for himself, not coming from much. Had a restaurant and a butcher's shop, and did really well for himself. But his mental attitude has always been, you work hard, and if you're not working hard, you don't deserve. And it's a really, so when and to be fair, I discussed that once with him, and then was like, right, this is one of the topics that we're just going to swerve around. But he can't understand how my philosophy would have any value, because it's not working hard enough. I do work hard, but not enough. And also it's not enough money, he doesn't see the whole ecosystem. So, but then he is in his 80s, so there's 2 very different lives. But it's interesting how it's all panning out.
Yeah, well, he'll look at the success as a completely different thing, won't he? I mean, money will be at the key of it, whereas actually, I think people coming through, it's about value that they've given, and value can be in so many ways. Plus, it's the purpose. What have they achieved? Who are they helping? It's not. I'm not seeing so much grabbing, gimme, gimme, gimme. I mean, there's still an element of that, of course, but they want to know what it's doing to change the world, because at the moment, I think they're of a view that the world is not going in a very good place. So they want it to change, and companies that don't seem to be focusing on that are going to lose out, because the talent isn't going to want to go there. So I was just some pop-ups. I thought I'd turn those off.
Don't worry. My sunshine keeps coming in and out, so I suddenly realised I've gone really dark in the room. But
one of the flaws.
And I think actually, what's become much more important, and it's definitely for me personally, which is why I ended up going self-employed and not, finding a new employer the last time my employment ended, was because happiness has become really important. That's like, for me, happiness is as important as money is to survive. It's, and if I am not happy, any money that I am earning is quite frankly not worth it. You know, it's not. Yeah, and
Well, we
I know it's a privileged position to be able to even say that, and who knows, maybe in the future I won't be as privileged to be able to have a choice. But for as long as I have a choice, I'm going to prioritize my own happiness and fulfillment.
Well, you go back to the book we mentioned right at the start of Slight Edge. I mean, it talks about seven sort of things key to happiness. And there's various different levels of lists, but financial freedom is one of them, yes, but it's not the one. There's plenty of others that go with it. So yes, you need to, if you choose to live particularly in a capitalist culture, you need to have some cash, there's no doubt. But do you need to have millions? Is there any need for billionaires? I've never understood it. Don't see why you'd want to be one. I don't see why we allow it. I don't get it. And you know, I'm not right or left wing really. I don't really have a view on these things. I just look at stuff, and if it doesn't make sense, I'm like, why is that a thing? How can you have so many millions? I saw a hilarious post recently and said, when you get to $1 billion of cash, we should give you a certificate to say, well done, you've won capitalism. Now you don't go beyond that, you know, but you've got your certificate. You can have it in the frame if that's, because what else are you doing it for? I mean, it's bizarre. Yeah, no, I can't imagine anyone needs that money. And I know the sports cars and the nice houses and all these things don't make you happy. They can be fun, but if no one likes you or you're not making a difference, it's weird. It's a whole different conversation for a different day. But I find it confusing.
I'm in the same boat as you. It just seems baffling. You know what it is? I can't comprehend the zeros. Like, I can understand 100 quid. I can understand 1,000. I can just about understand a million. But then anything beyond that, I'm just like, it's just, you know, it's just numbers on a piece of paper. That does not, I can't comprehend £1 billion.
No.
So and
No.
yeah, and I think you do pretty well to spend that over a lifetime. So yeah,
Yeah.
right. But then speaking of, segue on to the next question. We actually, one of the things that I do like to know is in terms of your own beliefs, and I call it a inheritance because there's another word for this that has been way overused. In terms of what do you want to leave behind? Like looking into the future, I know you're a family man as well. What's the type of change that you want to influence or
Yeah. I mean, for me, it seems quite simple, and it probably seems a bit trite, really. But I just wish people could be a little kinder to one another, and listen to one another. I know the media probably paints a more negative picture than life really is, because you see the worst cases of everything. But I see so many people peddling their opinions as facts, and people then buying into people's opinions as if they are facts without even a moment's thought for researching it and understanding it. But also to just attack. No, we've got a perfect scenario now where a lot of people have not performed brilliantly in a very challenging circumstance, and it's incredibly easy to point fingers. You know, it's so easy to be critical, and too many people find that enjoyable. And why can't you, if you have a view that is different, why can't you offer support and an alternative rather than just saying you're crap? I don't get it. And I look at, you know, social media posts, and a good friend of ours, Chris Reeve, and his friend Jack, that I sponsor their band channel, Talk Norwich City, and the poison that is sent their way because they support Norwich City and have a strong opinion about their club, and yeah, throw some banter the way of other supporters. That's fine. You get football banter back, but then, you know, those guys have had some personal tragedy, and people target that, and you are just scum. There's just no need for it. I don't understand where the anger is. But also, the great thing about Jack and Chris is they recognise they rise above it, and they pity these people. They don't rise to it anyway. They don't get upset. They're like, oh, how terrible must your life be that you feel the need to do that, because it means nothing to us. The events have happened to us. We've managed it. We've learned to cope. So your words don't penetrate in any way, shape, or form. But how miserable must you be to be looking for opportunities to try and make other people feel bad? And it is a lot more of it around than I would like to see. So it would be so nice if we worked over the next few decades. I'm hoping to last at least a couple more decades, that people, as they grow up, and my kids and their kids grow into a world where we actually look out for each other. and are kind, and we listen to people's views in a constructive way. It doesn't seem like it's massively hard to achieve, yet we are we are the most advanced we can be because of the time that we've all been around on Earth as human beings. But we seem like we are falling a long way off that sort of environment, and I don't really understand how it's happened. Honest, it frustrates me. I don't think there's a quick answer to it, but yeah, the fact that we have conversations about gender equality, race, wow, in the 21st century, this is still a thing, and it gets airtime and it is beyond me. So yeah, kindness and listening to one another. If those are the two things, then I know we'll be all right.
Yeah, and I think probably just to make clear, obviously I assume we are referring to trolling and singling out people that are behaving particularly badly online and with much unkindness, not so much the debates about accountability, which is a slightly different thing. Because there's a difference between mudslinging and go, did you realise this is happening?
Yeah, it's yeah, certainly. I mean, yeah, trolling is one level. I think it's when people are doing something and they're trying to do their best, to just say that that's not good enough is also unfair without offering some sort of solution, because it's so easy to do. So yes, and absolutely, the trolling is an obvious one, but it's amazing how much there is. But also when people are attempting to do something and they don't really know if it's the right thing to do, to just criticize, I don't understand why that's so many people's default position. Offer something constructive, offer your own views on it. But a lot of people seem to, especially in the world of social media, but not exclusively, get a lot of attention for just crapping on other people's ideas. No matter how bad those ideas might have been, we'll offer an alternative.
Basically.
Yeah. Positive challenge, I guess, whatever you would call it.
Well, because I'll just positively challenge you on this, because I've come across quite a few difficulties recently within my social network, where not necessarily people I know very closely, but maybe I used to know a lot closely, that are sharing things that I personally find questionable or have fact checked, or I was like, oh God. And I do make an effort to try and be very kind in my response and not just go, how dare you say it about him, because there's no point in calling someone an idiot, because I've shared stuff that I then later on found out, oh, that was fake, oops, and I'm just grateful for people that can gently go, oh, by the way, Barbara, check this source out. But it is becoming harder, I think, to have a conversation that isn't, and I don't know if it's because of the medium, because of the typing medium, it's lazy communications. It's not like we're picking up the phone or we are talking face to face, but it's almost like I'm not commenting or saying something to be nasty, but I'm going, oh, okay, I do feel like I should let you know that maybe you'll want to check your sources. But straight away, the conversation doesn't go into a conversation. It just goes boom. And then I check out, because I don't have time for that, quite frankly. But yeah.
Well, that comes into the listening bit, doesn't it? If you're going to put stuff out there, then you need to be able to hear stuff back. It's not always going to be positive. It's like I go back to Chris and Jack. They happily put stuff out there, and if it's related to what they've said and people have a different view, of course they have massive different views. Norwich City is a whole nest of opinions and different views, and they can handle that, and they'll have a back and forth. But there's just no need to go that lower blow. And the same, if you're talking about people maybe in a professional sense putting something out there, then why on earth shouldn't they be able to be challenged? But that's a case of having the confidence and the respect to listen to people as well, isn't it? Which, just like you say, communication. If we had Millie Brambleby here, she would be talking about it at length, about how communication is the key. I mean, I believe the same, but she deals particularly in conflict, doesn't she? And that is exactly it. Somebody posts something, you then say something, it's misconstrued, misunderstood, or it rubs them up the wrong way. But instead of just being, in my humble opinion, grown up about it, then people tend to sulk. And I don't know specifically what you're referring to, so it's not my intention to target anyone. But
no, it's more with regards to like fake stuff, you know. There's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
that. Unfortunately, we live in a time where a lot of this is going on, and I'm not talking even about something that could or could not be true. It's just very like, oh my god, very blatant, and you can fact check stuff, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, come on. But the sharing of it, you know, is well, in my opinion, damaging in terms of, you know, even mental health. Because if you keep saying the world's going to end any second, people might start thinking the world's going to end any second, and they're going to get really depressed and really low. And
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you there. I mean, it's a lot of fake news, isn't there, as certain people would coin the phrase, but it's true. People, it goes back to what I said, you know, people's opinions being passed around as fact.
yeah,
It's got to stop. It's unfortunate because, you know, social media does a lot of good in many ways, but it also is a tool for incredibly bad stuff to be easily accessible regularly. And I just wish more people would just be like, oh, hang on a minute, I'm not sure about that. Or like you say, sources, where's it come from? Why? And I don't know, people are too quick to do the retweet or the share or the like without reading the full. I mean, I've seen some people like some really extreme stuff because the context of what they've seen of an individual, maybe for 2 sentences, actually sounds quite sensible. I know certainly around the time of Brexit, people were talking about, they were sharing certain things, which when you looked into the individual of the person they were sharing were extreme right-wing racists. And I knew these people weren't racist, but they were sharing racist content, but they didn't realize it because they just picked up the meme, the little two-liner. And you're like, no, and like you, but I would go to them privately and say, have you actually checked out such and such and such and such? Because I don't think this is you. I'm pretty sure it's not. And look what they stand for, you know. So there's a lot of that. People just, I don't know, don't think, do they?
absolutely. I mean, I had to have a phone call with my dad, educating him of going, Dad, if it doesn't sound real, it probably isn't, and it might be worth. But then but bless him, and you know, and rightfully so, because he was like, but why would someone share that? Why would
Yeah,
someone
well,
like that? And then, you know, I had to say, well, actually, Dad, if you go all the way to the source, you might find it's just a computer, it might not be a person. And if it is a real person, if you go all the way back and figure out who that person is, and this person was to say that to your face at the street, and you'd form a, you know, because you form an opinion. If someone says something to you, you go, okay, risk analysis. I'm going to take this for its word, or actually, no, I'm going to question it and make my own opinion. So I think that's the difficulties with screens. Text. I had an old boss who always, because we had we used to text them. Well, this was before WhatsApp, and she always goes like, "This is lazy communications. Let's get on the phone because we're just misunderstanding each other." I think it's the best piece of advice I've got, especially in events when you're trying to run things, and then you go like, "Oh, why is she being such a moody ass?" And then you have to realise it's just someone under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I get a lot of people say, "Oh, right, well, you know, after we've worked out a way that they think they want to handle something, say, all right, so I'm going to email them." I said, "No, that's the one thing you're not going to do. You're either going to ring them or you're going to see them." They're like, why? Well, because what you've just said will not be how it goes down. It will not be how it's read. And there's just a whole hope. Don't send email. I hate email. So there we are. Anyway, I've gone on. Sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. So on that note, taking this discussion even further, how do you think can we create this change? Like, what do you think is going to have to happen? And you know, I know we don't have answers here, but just in terms of spitballing, like, how do you think are we going to get there to that level of kindness and willing to actually communicate effectively with each other?
Yeah, I think it's already starting to happen in some ways, but it's clunky at the minute. So you mentioned it earlier, actually, in terms of challenging the status quo. I mean, it's just, and I do think it's a generational thing. I think we're going to see it more and more and more, where people are just going to say, no, it's not right, or I don't agree with that, or where is that coming from? And they're going to challenge, and it will be, I don't know, I suppose there's a risk of it being a sort of virtual vigilante kind of world if we're not careful, but I'm hoping it will start to self-police itself. And I think it'll just be a case of challenging people's opinions, like we've just talked about, when they spout a load of nonsense or something that's hateful or what have you, that they will get jumped in it, but with facts, not with hate back. Because if someone says something hateful and you just throw hate back at them, you'll know better. It's all right, your views might not be morally as as unpleasant as that individual, but you'll know better. You need to rise above it, and people are starting to, as they will give considered argument, they will challenge it. We talked earlier, didn't we, about working from home. It's a much smaller issue in some respects, but challenging that we don't need to go to the office. Why do we go to an office? Why do we heat a building that we don't need to be populated with full of people? Why do we need to impact on people? You know, why do they have to go through like a half an hour long commute to work when they can do it from home and potentially more effectively and have a greater impact on their work life? But, you know, the question of why we do things is going to be how we do it, and people not just taking "because I told you so" as an answer, or because I say so, or because I am important. That's not going to wash anymore. You know, that's how I see it. It's not even how we do it, that's how it's going to happen, because people just will not accept things. We're not going to fit into the mold anymore. I can see the resistance is growing. And it's everywhere, isn't it? It's not just a cultural thing, it's in every single part of the world. You can see this sort of thing starting to happen because people have access to information. The issue is what you talked about just earlier, is what information. That if we could police that better, and it wouldn't be hugely difficult for certain massive organizations to handle that better, maybe they will, and perhaps that's the shift. When the information out there is credible and managed and policed in a helpful way, not in a gagging way, then you know, that might be the way. You just never know. You just don't know what's around the corner.
Yeah, so absolutely. And I think the other way to think of it as well, I felt like, in terms of information and what's out there, you know, I'm sure you're of the same opinion that actually the internet, social media as a concept is a beautiful thing, and it's enriched so many lives. It's made education more accessible. It's made so much more accessible to people that may not have had that opportunity. But I do think, like you said, we really need to start to appreciate that a blog post isn't a news article. They are two very different things. An opinion post isn't a journalist reporting live from the scene, telling you this now happened. I know that I come from a very different culture in Switzerland. You know, there's a really clear distinction about what you can report on, and there's really some really harsh rules in terms of, if you do a political piece, you need to show all the different aspects, all the different opinions, which can become quite, you know, troublesome in itself, because, you know, we all only have an attention span of 5 seconds nowadays. So how are you going to show us all the various things? But I think the other big word that came to my mind when you were talking is empathy.
Yeah, it's not even something you have to have naturally. I mean, I won't go into the details, but I do a lot of work around this, and, you know, I'm not naturally empathetic. It's not something that I find easy, but it doesn't mean I can't be empathetic towards people. It doesn't mean I'm unaware of people's feelings. But one of our good friends, for example, Kate White, she won't mind me saying, I mean, she lives and breathes empathy. So there's plenty of people that we can learn from. There's plenty of people we can talk to. My wife, it's a massive part of her makeup as well. So there's plenty of people out there who can help us be more empathetic and be more aware of feelings. And just when I was reaching up there, I wasn't just having a weird stretch. There's one other book I'll add to the mix called New Power. If anybody is interested about social media and the pros and cons, and they want to have a sort of debate in their mind about it, that is an amazing read. Gives you a very, very, very interesting perspective on the powers of social media, both good and bad. And it will challenge your thinking, and that's all I ever want to do with people, is challenge their thinking. So
fantastic. Well, Oliver, we've come to an end. Thank you so much for joining me. That was a lovely little chat, and I look forward to hopefully doing that again soon. I know we're going to be working on a little project soon with
looking forward to that.
Which, by the way, is all about empathy. So I'm really glad you said that, because I'm going to throw you out of your comfort zone.
But that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, I'm looking to be out of my comfort zone, so it's good. So no, I'm looking forward to that, and I can't wait to share with everybody how that goes. I know it's quite new for you as well, isn't it? So yeah, that does sound interesting, and anything I do with Matt is always fun. So and your events are always different, so I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on. It's been a good conversation. I'm sorry I have not stuck to the allotted 30 minutes, but 40 minutes for me. When you said 30 minutes, you've done pretty well, as others will tell you. So thank you, and well managed.
Absolutely fine. Thank you so much. Looking forward to having cocktails with you in the hopefully near future.
Yeah, hopefully we can get out and do it again soon. Fingers crossed, properly.
Thank you, Oliver.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, Barbara. Bye.